This episode of Baby, This is Keke Palmer is sponsored by BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Now let's get this show on the road. What do you think has been your greatest reinvention in your personal life up to date?
Good question.
Baby down.
That's it. That's it.
Of course, you know
got
I
it.
know.
Man, you know.
I relate to this so hard.
Yeah, I bet you do. I bet you do. You get it. You get it. I've toured with them twice, so I can't, got to give it to my guys.
That sounds like a hook.
Yeah, there you go.
Every damn thing. No, seriously. You have a beautiful soul, Jesse. You do. You do. Hey, Mom.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, girl. I'm good. I'm very excited because I'm going to be talking to one of my old school crushes, Jesse McCartney, today.
Oh, okay. I remember.
You remember
he was
him?
Huge. Yeah, you did a couple of shows.
I don't want just anyone to hold. I don't want my love to go to waste. Yes, he ate down. We loved him.
He's a very nice young man. I met him a couple of times. Just very nice guy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So I'm talking to him today. We're going to be talking about Reinvention because obviously he has a new project out. He's reinvented himself, and he's been in the industry for a long time. Like,
Yes.
I mean, it's given like White Usher. It's like he started out as a kid, you know what I mean? He got his success as a late teen, and then made a comeback in his 30s. You know, it's just like, come on. So I'm excited to talk to him about the different versions of himself. And I think it's fun when I talk to you about different artists that you've loved that reinvented themselves and just kind of like, I don't know, I think it'd be fun for us to get into just artists that we thought like, wow, I thought I had seen it all. And then you came out the bag and gave me something new.
Right.
Who is an artist that comes to mind that you think of as being a master of reinvention?
Oh, my goodness. I think an artist like Rick James. Like
Interesting.
Rick James started off and he was doing like punk rock bands and
Really?
all kinds of. Oh yeah. And then he was a songwriter at Motown, and then he went to Africa, and he saw a tribe
Come on,
of
the
men.
motherland.
Yeah, and he saw a tribe of men that had, cornrows.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he got his hair cornrowed, and he came back to America, and then he put on the pirate boots, and he did that whole little thing, and he kind of created a whole persona for himself.
Yeah.
And rumor has it that Prince used to open up for Rick James, and rumor has it that Prince might have like took a couple of little ideas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Inspired by Rick
Yeah.
James, was he?
Yeah, the whole pirate
fabulous.
look and Madonna.
Oh, Madonna.
Madonna.
What do you think the story she was telling us first off was?
I think the original storyline is I'm a white girl that got rhythm. I think.
Okay, simple, straight to the point.
She was telling us I'm from Michigan and I'm not a pretender. I think that was her message, which is I'm not appropriating the damn thing. I really do feel black music. I really do, date black men. I'm really into the culture. So I think that's what she was telling us at first.
It's so funny because a lot of people do feel like with that description that is exactly cultural appropriation. Like, okay, first it's the blacks, and then now you done took everything from the gays, and then now you like that. I do feel like in our generation, I've seen a few TikToks where they're like, "Let me tell you what's wrong with the early eras of Madonna." But there's always a reimagined history of what people did wrong in the 80s and the 90s.
Well, this is how I respond to that. Okay, because I do think that could be a valid point. I do think people could say, well, she was just a white girl dancing, and so dancing like black girls, and she took that. Oh, okay, now she's hanging around the gay people. She does. But the one thing I can't say, and I'm not defending her in any way, because I'm not saying she's a perfect artist or anything, but I'm just saying that she did bring a lot of light, and she did hire a lot of people. Like, if she's up there dancing, she had a bunch of gay people and a bunch of black people up there dancing with her. So, you know what I mean? So
you feel like she gave opportunities. Just as much as she was able to get big off of a culture that she was not necessarily a part of or living truly in the skin of, she maybe gave opportunities where they maybe wouldn't have had them.
Right. I do think that, and I also think there's a difference between someone misappropriating and taking advantage of a culture to make money versus people who actually love that culture. And I may be, blind to it, but I thought, she was successful in my generation in making us think that she did care.
Yeah.
What I don't know her personally, but she was successful.
I think that's fair. I mean, obviously, and that's your opinion, and that ultimately, we're talking about reinvention, and she definitely was influenced by a lot of different cultures, and I think that is what allowed her maybe to reinvent herself, is the inspiration and putting herself in different spaces. There's no way we're able to get into her brain and know her intention, but somebody else that I know that people often look past in their reinvention is, I mean, how do you go from you and I must make a path to that is insanity. Michael Jackson is one of the greatest reinventors, because how the heck do you go from black to white? No, I'm kidding. My point is just to say.
But you know what? Michael is such a enormous talent that sometimes he doesn't get mentioned in a lot of categories because he has his own category. But yeah, like I said, he's very.
He went from an afro to looking like Sandra Bullock. All I'm saying is, Michael has known how to reinvent himself in ways unknown to man. And I just can't even know what made him do that. Like, what made you start saying, that? Like, why?
You know what? I know a guy who used to be in Studio 54 in New York with Michael. And he told me that Michael would go into the DJ booth and would just watch and study what songs were being played and how they made the people dance. You know what I mean? So he would study the people, and he would really watch and take notation and say, okay, this song they're really moving to, this beat okay. So I don't think Michael gets enough credit for being a strategist. He was very strategic in a lot of the stuff that he's did. Now, there's so many people that reinvented themselves, but there are some that really did, like Patti LaBelle. I think Patti LaBelle was. Yeah, remember I was watching Beverly Hills Cop. Come on and shake it up, and then attitude. I got a new attitude.
Dude, I mean, she don't quit, and she the one with them cakes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, now she done moved in the cakes. I mean, she definitely ain't one to play with when it comes to reinvention. She's going to make sure every new generation gets a little taste of what she's got to put out. Somebody else that's reinvented themselves, I don't really like his trolling ways, but 50 Cent. I mean, he came from, you know what I'm saying, you could find me in a club, to all of a sudden I've got franchises of television shows. And by the way, vitamin water just made me a billionaire. Like, what happened? And how did you pull that quick one?
I just think you have to just call him smart. He's a
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's a smart
and really
one.
evolving and growing, which I think is a cool thing to see in rap, when we see the rappers mature into a different space and show us how to scale up from what sometimes seems like a young guy sport, when they're able to take what they've been able to do in that area and then make it to something else. Okay, so now I'm going to ask a controversial question. Who's somebody that you think could use a story refreshing? Like, whose storyline has run stale?
Oh my goodness. Oh my God. I don't know. That's such a personal preference. I think for me, I think people that bore me, and maybe bore is a harsh word, but like, I'm a little over Christina Aguilera.
Now wait a minute, why Sharon?
I'm just a little.
I just did not expect you to say.
And all that stuff. It's like she's a great talent. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes I be like, okay, we know you can run, girl. Like, what else we gonna do here? But
it's Christina Aguilera. It's me asking you, and you immediately coming out with Christina Aguilera. You've been tired of her for some time, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, ever since that stripper movie, I think so.
What stripper movie?
Yeah, but, that movie she did with Cher. Didn't she do that movie with Cher?
Oh, why did that rub you the wrong way? What was you knew exactly the moment? Why?
I don't know. I just think it, again, it's just kind of like, sometimes the stick is kind of old. It's she's a great she's a great vocalist and all that stuff. And I don't know what I want her to do. I mean, that's the problem. That's why she shouldn't pay a damn attention about what I gotta say, because it's not like I know what I want her to do. It's like, Christina, this is what I want you to do. I just know I'm tired of what you're doing. So there you go. So I don't know.
That's absolutely hilarious, girl. Who is someone in film or TV? Do you have someone in film or TV? Like, are you tired of Liam Neeson getting people there to take
No, I
him?
love him. No, he could get taken 4 more times for me. I love that. Let me see. No, I'm trying to see who in film did I kind of get tired of seeing do the same thing. Sometimes, the industry drives you in that direction because it's successful in what you're doing. But let me see. I'm going to tell you this, though. I saw the new Bad Boy. It's good.
I'm not tired of that, honey.
No,
I'm not.
no.
But wait a minute. Why did I laugh a little
No.
bit? Because they kept showing us. Why did they keep doubling down on them getting aged? Why was everybody having a heart attack every 5 minutes? I mean, I was like, now y'all can't keep telling us they 50 now.
Yeah, I don't want to tell the movie, but I was kind of like, they really tried to keep it close to the very first one that we fell in love with, and so I kind of like that. But they did show their age, and I guess you can't hide your age. I mean, they're both in their late 50s.
They leaned into it, and I'm making a joke. It's funny,
yeah,
because I actually appreciate them leaning into it.
I did too.
But I was like, now wait a minute. Was somebody about to, pass out like that? It was funny that they were doing it, but it also was like, wow, we grew up with these guys, and now they're in their, they're in their mid-age. Would you call it? What do you call 50s? Like that's middle age. They're middle age.
They're autumn years. I don't know.
And it's like, wow, like it's really cool. But I thought the movie was so good. And matter of fact, Sharon, speaking of reinvention, Will Smith.
Yes,
Will Smith, a wonderful person of reinvention. First, he was a rapper and kind of like what people would try to say was like a gimmicky rapper, soft gimmicky rapper. Ultimately became sitcom star, then becomes a action movie star, then actually becomes like really good and active with social media and rebirths a whole new life through YouTube and Instagram. I mean, and then just reminds us that he all is like our TV uncle, dad, guy that we love.
Exactly. What the Bad Boy movie does is that it kind of tells us why we loved him in the first place, why we loved him and Martin, and then it also kind of says he seems very humble in it. It makes you feel like all the stuff that has happened to him in the last couple of years or whatever, it actually made him better.
Well, that's what you would hope hardship does, for sure. And I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see him come on the other side, because it is inspirational, for sure, to see him handle adversity in a new generation, right? Because back in his time, people can't really like tell you how they feel immediately. Like, you're not going to hear that until someone does an article or whatever it is. So for him to be seeing that stuff in real time in a way that he probably has never seen before or experienced before, which is common to my generation, but I imagine very new to him, and to be able to face his worst moments and all that kind of stuff, to see him continue to rise and maintain and, like you said, grow and evolve beyond that. It's just awesome. It really is. I'm glad to see him rise to the occasion constantly.
Well, my final person I'm going to say is that she's starting to grow, but I hope she doesn't grow to the point where Leo don't like her anymore, and that's Miss Rachel. Oh! I've noticed her show is changing a little bit. It's getting really high graphics and
apparently now I think Leo might have already outgrown our girl Miss Rachel, which breaks my heart, because now he's on some show called Helper Cars Cartoon. Cartoon. It's girl, all it is a bunch of helper car. This is helper car tow truck. He's gonna pick up the other car and change the tires. Like, his obsession, he's so obsessed with cars. I had to get him a fake kid cat truck. What type of kid wants a cat truck? What type of construction work are you doing, son? Why do you want to be a construction worker?
Leo is fascinated with wheels. He's fascinated with the mechanics of how they go round and round. He likes cars. Without a doubt. So I'm not surprised.
Well, Mom, you give me so much joy. And I love talking about reinvention with you. Now it's time to get into this combo with Jesse McCartney. Unless you're checking under the hood or changing your own oil, you may not feel like a car person. But the truth is, everyone can be a car person. You just need to unlock the love of driving. We talk on our show a lot about purpose, about finding your why, the thing that lights you up inside. And when it comes to a love of cars, my why was the independence it offered me. There's nothing like the feeling of driving down the road by yourself. Windows down, alone with your thoughts, and a good playlist. And sometimes discovering the love of driving just takes the right car to unlock it. It takes a BMW. These cars are so special. They're just gorgeous. And if you've ever been behind the wheel of a BMW, you know what I'm talking about. You can just feel the high performance of this vehicle and the precise handling that gives driving a whole new feeling. It's such a thrill. I'm also partial to the assisted parking that allows you to enjoy the drive without stressing when you make it to your destination and you got to squeeze into a really tight parking space. Whatever you're looking for, unlock your love of driving with BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Baby, this is Keke.
Okay, let me tell you guys, I have wanted to talk to this guest because he's someone I've been following for a really long time. He acted on All My Children in the 90s. He was in Dream Street. He put out the album Beautiful Soul in 2004, which we all know. He's been making beautiful music ever since. Please welcome Jesse McCartney. Welcome to the show.
How are you, Keke? It's nice to meet you.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing to meet you. I love you down. I've been a big fan for years, and it's so nice to have you on the show. How have you been? What's been going on lately?
I've been well. Things have been going great. I just got off tour about a month ago. I put out a new EP just a few months back and been back in the music game now for a minute, and things have been going great. Traveling a lot. Been home for the last few weeks, just kind of settling in. My wife and I are doing some construction on the house, so a little bit of
trying to balance a little bit of home, personal,
exactly.
and a little bit of business.
Exactly, a little bit of domesticated life, as well as traveling and touring and performing music. So
and are you
great.
from LA? Are you from Cali?
I'm from New York.
Oh, come on,
Yeah,
period.
I grew up in New York. Yep.
What part?
I was born in Chelsea, and then my folks moved to White Plains, like 40 minutes outside of the city, raised a family.
I feel like I do feel that East Coast energy from you. I feel like that totally aligns.
It's still there for sure.
Yeah, I feel that. Now, obviously for me, one of my favorites from you is Beautiful Soul. I have to ask you, how many times you get stopped in the street, or do people just come up to you and sing it? Because I've been singing it getting ready all day to talk to you. I'm like, I don't want another friend. It's too good.
I do. That song has just been such a blessing. It's 20 years old this year. So we released it in 2004. So it's now marked a 20-year part of my life. And it's incredible. It's really exciting now to see a whole new generation of young people sing the song.
Yes,
like
for
I
sure.
said, I got off tour. And so there's been a lot of Gen Zers and even younger, millennial moms bringing their babies to the show that are now singing Beautiful Soul. So that song has definitely come full circle. And it's that record has definitely given me so much.
Okay, so I want to talk today about Reinvention, because you're somebody like me that went from, you were a successful child star, then we're in a group, and then became a successful pop star.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to just go back to the beginning, going from you being a child entertainer. You were on All My Children. What was going on in your life? Had you been acting for a while? How did you get to become a part of that show?
Yeah, so it was a long road. I started out as a young child actor on stage mostly. I did a lot of theater growing up, and I attribute that to both my parents in the 70s and 80s. They did a lot of theater growing up in New York.
My parents too.
Yeah, so they kind of raised me in a very musical family. And by the time I was 8 or 9 years old, I was doing local productions with my folks. And somebody told my mom, hey, you should bring him down to Manhattan and see how he tries his hand professionally. And my first role was on the national tour of The King and I. And so that was my first, that's how I cut my teeth on stage. I was 9. I was 9 years old, little baby Jesse.
I got my start at 9 too.
Yeah. And then that sort of snowballed, and I did what every young child actor does, goes to auditions in the city. And I was auditioning for, Cinnamon Grams commercials and, Charmin and Cha-Cha-Cha and doing all the things. And then eventually my first TV gig was on All My Children. I was 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And I got to work alongside, Susan Lucci and Michael Knight and Josh Duhamel and a lot of big actors that came off that show much later. And And I was on the show for a few years, and then things just sort of took off from there. But it started in New York on the East Coast.
How was it working on that show, especially coming from doing mostly stage to kind of getting into TV? It's a different vibe. What was your experience like?
It's incredibly difficult. The soap world doesn't get enough credit for the amount of work and
really,
I feel like, first of all, it's pages and pages and pages of dialogue that you have to memorize. They shoot an entire 50-page episode every day, so it's like a real test, a real memory test. And that's definitely, I think, kind of, it grew me up pretty quickly in terms of being a professional and learning your lines and having to show up on set and be prepared. And there were a couple days I wasn't, and I really, I got hammered for it. It was like, hey, you got to know your lines when you get to set. Anyway, but it was tough. And
discipline.
Discipline. It definitely instilled a lot of discipline. And I got to work with some incredible people. And that was sort of my first TV experience.
Yeah.
And then at that point, we moved back more into music, and I started with a boy band, Dream Street, right after that.
So for you, coming out of All My Children, did you feel like you had to make a choice to okay, I'm going to now focus on music, or would you be trying to also balance acting with that?
Yeah, I was so young that really all I cared about was entertaining, like you said. So it didn't really matter where the stage was or who I was performing to, whether it was television or being on stage and doing Broadway. I just really enjoyed performing.
Yeah.
And, I did grow up singing and acting. I felt like I could kind of jump around from one to the other. But eventually, when you really want to get great at something, you kind of have to put all of your eggs into one basket for a little bit of time.
It's true.
And so that's when...
At least for some chunks.
It's true. And so that's when the music thing started sort of presenting itself as like a full-time job. And I started writing and started making music and sort of, building this career as a young solo artist.
So how did Dream Street come about? Like, was this a producer you knew? Was your parents help put this together? How did y'all become a group?
Yeah, so Dream Street was like, right on the heels.
I remember that too, baby.
Do you really?
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a cult little following. I mean, we really started growing in like the tri-state area of New York, and that's where we built our fan base. And we were popular among like young Disney fans, right? Because we were on Disney radio back in the day.
Because that's maybe down.
That's it. That's it.
Of course, you
got it, man. So yeah, I mean, Dream Street was put together. We were right on the heels of like NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. And I think that the producers were trying to create this new boy band. I was 12 years old, 13.
I'm about to say, y'all were younger. Y'all weren't,
really
it was kind of really for getting the kids. Yeah.
Much younger. And they had like a cattle call of like, hundreds of boys that came in, auditioned, sang, danced. And I was never a very good dancer, so I was sort of like leaning on my vocals to get me through.
Vocals was always strong, though.
That's it.
We just need a little rock.
That's right. That's it. So we did that. I was, we were together for a few years, and we got pretty far. I mean, we ended up opening for Britney Spears at one point, and like
Insane.
that was, which was amazing. And then the band dismembered after, I don't know, a few years, but that was sort of the stepping stone and what would become the beginning of like this new solo career.
So go from All My Children then to be in this group and then thrusted into touring. I don't think people understand like how difficult touring is. Like the few times that I've had my experience with touring, and never any like, I'm thinking about Britney Spears. You probably guys went everywhere around America. Everywhere. That's a pretty heavy duty tour.
Yep.
That's a lot of work as a kid, but you loved it. Was touring something that came easy for you, that you enjoyed, like all the traveling and kind of being away from home?
Well, then for sure. Now at 37, let me tell you, it's a lot harder. But yes, no, it was something that I just, like I said, I was with a bunch of guys who I enjoyed being around. I was with my people, it was other young people who enjoyed performing and singing, and how a lot of young people get on sports teams. I was a part of this like music group, and it was a community that I was comfortable being around. And you do grow up fast because you're traveling and you're working alongside mostly adults, who are pulling
fast,
all the strings. But yeah, it was. I just have nothing but great memories of those times where you're traveling and you're opening up for pop icons like Britney and Justin, actually, Timberlake came backstage during one of the shows. And he, we didn't know he was going to be there. But at the time, of course, NSYNC was like our boy band hero.
Of course.
And we didn't know he was there. And he came backstage and he was like making sure we were ready for the show. He's like, "You're not nervous, are you?"
Nah!
we are now.
Now,
And
Justin, why would you say
doing
that?
he's like doing all of our moves with us and like doing 5, 6, 7 backstage and just kind of getting us ready for the show. But it was like one of those moments of like, oh, we're really doing this. We've made it, you know? And
Britney's one of my faves. How was it being on tour with her?
it was great. I mean, we didn't see much of her. You know, most opening acts, you know how it goes. Like
very in and out.
They're in and out. You know, you see them once in a blue moon, like walking down the hallway. But she was lovely. She was super nice. And I think we were on tour with her for a few weeks. But yeah, I just remember performing in front of like tens of thousands of people every night and just thinking like,
insane.
This is definitely what I want to do forever. You know, this is amazing.
So at that point when the group disbanded, did you think to yourself, okay, I want to be in another group? Or did you just think, I got to just dig more into music? Like, was acting even a part of the conversation, or did you immediately kind of go into the solo career thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I always tried to balance the two. At the same time, I was auditioning for television roles and parts, and a lot of roles went to other actors, and you know, I was trying to balance the two. But I always had, you know, my heart has always been in music, and I think it's still my biggest love. And so, you know, after Dream Street, you know, I went back in the studio and started. I was pulling songs off of Taxi, which is like a publishing music house where you just thousands of songs that are being published, you know, by songwriters.
Yeah.
And we just thumbed through this list of thousands of songs, and we found Beautiful Soul. And it was just like this, you know, diamond in the rough. And we were like, that sounds like a good song. Let's record that. And so I started putting this EP together. Beautiful Soul was one.
How old were you at the time?
15.
Yeah.
And Beautiful Soul was one, and there was a few others. And I did this EP and just like a solo project, unsigned artist, and recorded it and started doing local shows, performing for, you know, the fans of Dream Street, because I had this audience of, you know, from the Dream Street days.
So I gotta stop. How did you do that at this time, right? Because nowadays I think about it in terms of like, oh, social media. I just put my but that wasn't a thing then. So when you were putting your shows together, I'm curious of what was the process that you went to make yourself known, like, or to remind people that this is a show that's happening.
Right.
Was it street teams? Was it?
Yeah, we had exactly.
Okay.
I wouldn't have even thought of that until you said it. But we had street teams.
Yeah.
We had, you know, just like honestly really hardcore fans that wanted to help us out, that would just help with the logistics of putting a show together.
Damn, that's crazy.
It was real. Yeah, I mean, we were a real sort of, you know, we were
Mom
just
and
sort of
pop.
like mom and pop
Family
shop.
thing,
Exactly.
yeah.
It was a family thing. I had an incredible manager who, you know, helped coordinate all the shows. And eventually she got a call from somebody in Hollywood and from the record companies that were like, hey, we've noticed your artist Jesse doing these shows, and he's unsigned. Will you fly him out to LA? And I think I was 15 at the time. Beautiful Soul was now on AM radio as like a Disney song, and it was like #1 for weeks at a time. And it was rare to have this like #1 song with an artist that's not signed back then.
Yeah, I would have thought in my mind that you was with Hollywood Records.
Yeah, I was, but they didn't really sort of
Sign you.
to sign me until the song was really doing well on the East Coast and on AM radio. And I came out there, and at the time I had been out to LA just the year prior for pilot season, and I auditioned for a show called Summerland.
I remember.
Which would end up getting picked up. So I kind of came out to shoot the show,
Yes.
meet with record companies, and all of this sort of just this like synergy just all happened at once. I signed the record deal, the show gets picked up, the show goes on the WB, Beautiful Soul comes out, and all of a sudden just that was really kind of when it...
I mean, that all feels extraordinarily organic. I mean, it reminds me of like now with social media, when someone has a song that's popular on SoundCloud or popular on YouTube, that happens, and then it helps them get a record deal, and then the record deal actually actively works. Because a lot of times when people go to the record deal first, it's like pulling teeth, and you got to force them to believe that what you're saying is going to work. But when it happens the way that happens, it kind of... I don't know, it gives you some leverage. Did you feel like you and your team had leverage going into the Hollywood Records deal? Kind of, they knew the kind of artist you want to be and knew how to support you?
We definitely had a good case to make, right? Which is like, look, I have this built-in audience from Dream Street. We have this like fan base that we organically grew over 5-6 years that were showing up to shows. Like 400 or 500 people with kids, young kids, were showing up to these concerts. And it was sort of like we did the work, and yeah, we definitely made a case. I mean, it was, you know, the equivalent to having like 10 million followers now or something on a social media app. You know, back then, also I think back then there was just fewer artists that were known. Now you go on, you know, TikTok or Instagram, and there's just hundreds, if not thousands, of artists that are making music that are super talented. And I think the pick of the litter is now much wider, right? And there's a lot of, back then it was just, I think, harder to find and discover artists. And here we were with this sort of like on a platter, like, hey, we got this good thing going. And I think they saw the vision and they saw what was happening. And that's when we signed to the Disney machine.
Okay.
And sort of the rest was history. But I think that moment with Beautiful Soul and Summerland, that was really the big leap from like being this local New York guy to now just like a household name at that point.
Did you feel like it was a reinvention from you going to, from Dream Street to being the Jesse McCartney? Or did you feel like it was kind of just like actually like a, not necessarily an active, like I've got to change my image, but kind of like I'm just growing up?
Totally. I was very unaware of that sort of part of it, The
strategy,
so to speak. Yeah, I was very much just, again, like doing what I love to do and appreciating that other people liked it too. I was not very, aware of that stuff, which was kind of nice. There was an innocence to it still that I think people really resonated with. And I think I was viewed maybe as like this, every guy, this guy next door who could like also sing and wasn't very controversial, I just like, I did my thing. And I think the label sort of helped with the strategy of like where to position me in the landscape of music. But I was just, again, just doing my thing and kind of just having a great time and singing songs that I love to sing. And it wasn't until later that,
I literally could not agree with you more of, that was the vibe that I got, especially with the tie-in with Summerland.
Right.
It was like, that's the guy.
Right.
The guy that he's playing on the show is the guy that's singing the song.
Right.
He's the guy with the, his family. They got stuff going on. It's some edge, but it's nothing too dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, that was the exact vibe.
Yeah.
So obviously you come off of this, you're now with the Disney machine. Beautiful Soul is a huge hit for all ages. Like, even though it was popular in the Disney, I mean, like grown ass men, women were like Beautiful Soul, you know? So you broke through, all these ceilings, and you're starring on this TV show. Where are you at that point? Because now you have some awareness of, I'm like,
who I am, to the people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was complicated for sure because, like you said, I was still growing up. I was a young teenager. I was battling the normal things that people go through, like, acne and
oh my gosh, I hate the
puberty
acne thing.
and
I still
just
got
like
it going
all
on.
of the things. And the culture then too was so different where you were kind of called out for it, which is, and that's really hard as a young person to like hear people making fun of your physical appearance for just no other reason, just to sell papers and sell magazines.
Literally.
And that was really tough. And I remember that being a challenge for me, but ultimately it goes back to just having an incredible family and a great team around me that believed from the beginning and sort of to protect me from all of that outside garbage that comes with fame. And, there were definitely tough moments, but I always remember just, what my parents said, which is just to be a good person, be nice to everybody, and it'll come back to you in spades. And that's what I still try to live by 20 years later. But ultimately, it was just something that I loved. And I know that, making music and singing and performing, as long as I continued to do that well, that people would still stick around, despite, having a zit on my chin. So
Yeah. No, that's really true. Me personally, I've always dealt with acne, and it's still something that I deal with to this day. And it does become self-conscious, especially when we're doing a career that involves us being in the public eye.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And not feeling like you know how to help yourself, but then also trying to feel like, I shouldn't worry about this, but I do.
Yeah.
So I really do relate to that. And I don't really know that there's anything perfect to say other than just to find solace and excitement in what it is you love, because everybody has something
everybody has
that we
their
hate,
thing.
or that we're
they're
struggling
insecure
with
about. Totally. Yeah, it's definitely, I think the culture has shifted and changed a lot more now, which is nice, but it's back then it was definitely rough, and I thank God I had the team that I had around me to sort of protect me from it.
Baby, this is Keke Palmer, yeah.
Imagine this. It's Sunday morning. There are piles of laundry that need to be put away and dust bunnies that need to be swept. You have a full day of adulting in front of you, and all you want is to be transported away. Begrudgingly, you pick up a broom and ready yourself to start sweeping. But wait, you're forgetting the most important part. You open up the Audible app, and suddenly, the universe is infinite. The power to transport yourself to another world where laundry and dust bunnies don't matter, as in the palm of your hands. Through storytelling, Audible can take you from the comfort of your living room to the streets of South Central LA with Snoop Dogg forming Death Row Records in a matter of seconds by tuning in to the Audible original From the Streets to the Suites. Written and read by none other than friend to the show, Snoop D-O-double-G. Y'all know I have been an Audible girly for years at this point, and they're going to have to send someone if they ever want me to give up my Audible originals. I mean, just knowing that at any given moment I have the world's biggest audiobook selection in my pocket fills me with so much joy. As a lifelong storyteller and listener, I understand the comfort and exhilaration of a well-produced story, and Audible has them in spades. And not just any old regular story either. No, Audible is here to take audio storytelling to the next level, creating unrivaled listening experiences and innovative original content that you can take with you anywhere. While traveling, working out, walking the dog, doing chores, you decide. New members can try Audible free for 30 days. Plus, you can choose one bestseller or new release to keep forever. That's right. There's more to imagine when you listen. Try Audible today at audible.com/Keke. That's audible.com/Keke. You know, upon reflection of my many years of vacationing and hot girl antics, I've noticed I've always had great experiences with Airbnb. I mean, so much so that I've actually celebrated several birthdays in some of Airbnb's most loved guest favorite homes. And it makes sense because with Airbnb, I can be my own travel agent and find a spot that matches the celebration vibes I'm in the mood for. Like lounging by the pool and kikiing with the girls and maybe some time for a little turn up. Airbnb has got options for all of that. Take my 27th birthday, for example. I spent it in Orlando with 4 of my closest friends, and we stayed in what can only be described as an MTV Cribs-worthy house. Okay, I'm talking fabulous decor, lavish finishes, the work. I mean, the best part is that I got to share this gorgeous little private hideaway with my best Judies. Okay, we stayed up all night, talking mess, eating good food, and frolicking in the pool. No stress, no looky-loos, just a beautiful birthday in a stunning location with the people I love most. And guess what? I did it again on my 30th birthday. But this time, we got a bigger, even more private crib and really leaned into the tranquil nature of it all. We had masseuses come in, and you know the jacuzzi was bubbling all night long. We were getting pampered and polished, okay? Thanks to all these magical experiences, I know that I can trust Airbnb to deliver during the moments that matter the most, like the ones spent with friends and family. Now, go book yourself an Airbnb and see how right I was. Holla at your girl. And so what was your journey from that? Because, I know a lot of times people are like, oh, it seemed like so-and-so took a break, but it doesn't necessarily, they actually didn't necessarily take a break. You're just not leaning in enough. Right. So from that time, from Beautiful Soul to now, you know, in this new project, what was happening for Jesse the person and Jesse the artist? Like, were you focused on acting at all? Were you solely focused on music? You know, how did your relationship with your career change?
Has it evolved? We definitely, so after Beautiful Soul, you know, about 2008, my sophomore album which was the second record, is what any person or anybody in the industry would describe as like kind of a flop. You know, it came out, even though we still sold like 500,000 records, the label was like, this is not going the way that we thought it would. Let's start over. And at that point, that's when we really started becoming aware of like, okay, and strategizing, where do I want to be in sort of the pop landscape? And a new A&R person came on board, and she sort of helped me discover my love and my appreciation for R&B music and soul music. And I started getting in the studio with a lot of more rhythmic writers and hip hop writers, people like Sean Garrett and Tricky and all those guys from like the mid 2000s.
Tricky did my last album.
And that's when in 2008 then we recorded Leavin', which would become my first number one. And all of a sudden it would be we went from like Beautiful Soul to like a little bit more edgier pop music, and that was great. And that was sort of the beginning of this new chapter. At this point, I'm now like 21, 22, and I'm still acting to a degree, you know, guest stars here and there on some big shows and all of the procedural crime dramas you could imagine from CSI to Law and Order to Criminal Minds, all of those, and sort of keeping my foot in the acting door, but really sort of now coming into my own as an adult, as a singer as well. And after that record, that was kind of when things started to take a turn, not in a bad way, but with the record company, the head of the label stepped down. And once he left and somebody new came in, that was sort of the beginning of the end with Hollywood Records. And it was a great time. We spent 10, 11 years together, but that's kind of when I decided to take a big break. It wasn't working anymore with the label. And at that point, I was so tired. I was only 23 years old and I was already just so burnt out.
I feel you.
And I just took some time. I took a few years to really kind of sort of figure out who I was, like what I wanted to do. I started dating for the first time. Like, you know, I didn't have time to hold down a relationship or a girlfriend. And by the time I was 24, you know, I bought my first house and I met my now wife, but my girlfriend at the time, and started just sort of like becoming a normal person again and just enjoying all of the fruits of those past labors. And and then I got back on the music horse, like, I don't know, about 7-8 years ago, really started producing and writing all of my own stuff. I'd been spending a lot of time writing. I did a lot of writing for other artists as well, and thought maybe I would just be a songwriter and do that for a while. And it wasn't until I would say 2015 I put out my first studio album as an independent artist, and just sort of building back that audience and getting them back into venues. And now here we are, like in 2024, I guess. I put out an EP and things are going great. We're like back to playing venue sizes that I once was playing at Hollywood Records at the peak with Hollywood.
It's amazing.
And we're about to go back on tour again in October. So things are going great. And it sounds like, you know, all the millennials are still showing up, and even the younger people.
All day. I mean, I think some people with artistry, you know, are self-consciously being like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next story I'm telling? But what I hear from you is like you really do follow the waves of what you're learning about yourself. From the beginning of, I'm just doing me and I'm just having fun, you know, coming out of Dream Street, I don't really have no strategy, to, oh, wow, there is a strategy, there is a story that I have to decide to tell, so I'm going to figure out how to tell this story. To then realizing, oh, wait, my story is evolving and maybe this is the direction I want to go in. What were the moments or the things that have happened in your life since then that helped to inform the kind of artist or the person that you find yourself being today, making the kind of music you're making?
It's a great question. I think just living life. I mean, songwriting, I think, just gets better as you get older. You just know more things. You've had more experiences. At this point now, I've traveled the world several times over. I've met so many different people. I've experienced so many different cultures. I kind of have a better understanding of how the world works, how relationships work, and certainly meeting somebody that you're in love with, that you love, that informs albums and albums of material. I think, you know, just also reflecting on the past and my childhood is great for songwriting. And I put out an album a couple years ago called New Stage, and it was sort of about the ins and outs of growing up in the industry. And it was very, it had more of a somber tone. It was a singer-songwriter feel to the album that kind of explained what it was like for me, the highs and the lows and the experiences that I went through in a very vulnerable way, which I've never done before. And I think that really resonated with people because it's honest. And honest songwriting, I think, is the most relatable.
I really relate to hearing you talk, Jesse, because what I get from you is it's a similar way to how I feel about the craft, and also how I feel about growing up in the industry, that sometimes, you know, we do forget to live. Yeah. When you started so young and you found what you love so young, and that's your main relationship, is outside of your family, it's me and this passion of mine.
Right.
And you focus so much on it because it's so fun and you're learning so much about life and yourself through the experience and the perspective of this craft. And then you look up one day and you don't really know what life is about. And I even find myself, you know, feeling that way at 30 today. Yeah. What does it look like for me to explore and to live outside of this relationship with this craft?
Right.
And it's kind of freaky and scary. And I want to ask you, like, how did you decide to make that jump, to take those years off?
Yeah.
Because this guy, I mean, I know you had to be scared, because it scares me to think about think about doing that.
I think also for me, you know, I think it's a natural, it comes with age, I think, as you start to look around. And, you know, I think watching my folks get older too is like a real wake up call to say, like, you know, what are we doing? You know, you're chasing this thing it's incredible and it's rewarding.
And it's elusive.
And it's elusive. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really fulfill me the same way that my close relationships fulfill me. And I think when you can really, once you figure that out, you start to understand really what counts and what's important. And to me now, like my father just came into town for a week, and I hadn't seen him in a couple years, and he lives on the East Coast still, and he's about to retire. And like, I just start to see like, you know, how many years we have left together and how many experiences we get to share. And he stayed for a week and we did nothing. Like we hung around the house. We went and, you know, went to the beach. We went and played mini golf. We did like, just like everyday things. And it was just quality time, I think, is to me now what is most important. And I still love my career and I love making music, but ultimately, you know, it's the people you share it with. And once that's gone, it's like, what's it all for? So for me, I think, you know, just really juicing those moments and having those moments are to me the most important thing, and even more so than having, you know, a successful music career. It's just quality time.
Do you think having those highs and those lows, you know, in the industry, also helped paint a picture of what it's worth?
Absolutely.
So to speak, where you realize like, hey, well, I have ups and downs in my personal life. I have ups and downs in my career. When I'm looking at these ups and downs in my career, you know, is it really worth that? Or is it really, you know, like, do you feel like that impacted your ability to also kind of be able to like see what was really a value and what wasn't?
Totally. I think failure is like super important. And I think, you know, when you get so much so early and you have just this career that, if I'm being totally honest, like everything that we did was just hitting, like from the time I was young all the way up into my mid-20s, like everything was just really working. And it just felt like, oh, this is, I don't know why people think this is hard, you know, like, and I don't mean that from like, I just mean that it really,
genuinely.
I didn't face any real challenges until my early to mid 20s, where things started, you know, all of a sudden certain things wouldn't work. And it would be like, wait, what? This doesn't work all of a sudden? It's been working great. Like, what's going on? And, you know, I think that's a real wake up call to like, you do need to work hard. Things don't come that easy. And in the meantime, like really start thinking about what counts and what matters to you, because if all that stuff goes away, what's left? You know, like if this stuff doesn't work, like what do you have to show for it, and what else matters to you? And that's think, so
insightful.
Yeah. I don't mean to get all existential and heavy.
That's important. And that's what I think that's important. That's what we got to hear, especially in this space where everything is so, you know, obviously I like purpose. I like the concept of purpose. I feel like I feel purpose in what I do and what I'm passionate about. But it also can be dangerous because, like you said, we're not just our purpose. We also are our existence and our relationships and the love that we have in our lives. But having said that, and maybe you didn't have this, but I would assume, you know, loving and having this relationship with your creativity the way that you do, there had to have been a moment of guilt when you decided to kind of like, okay, you know, like I'm not going to be like, you're not going to be like my total main focus. I'm going to focus on other aspects of myself.
Right.
Where did you put that guilt? How did you deal with having that guilt, if you had it? I don't know.
You mean in terms of like putting the career on the back burner? Well, I mean, you know, there were certainly a lot of people on my team and that I work with that, you know, that sort of, you know, part of their livelihood was my career. And you definitely think about that. But ultimately, you know, you have to think about your own happiness and your mental health first, and just like making sure that you're happy and not, it's hard when you're sort of running the ship and there's all these people on board that rely on you. It can be difficult, but, I think if you have, like, it's going back to the original point, which is like if you have a good team around you that care about you first and foremost, then it makes it a lot easier. But yeah, I mean, I think it was just pretty clear I hit a wall and a point where I just needed some me time and time to explore and figure out who I was. And I didn't get that until much later in life. You know, a lot of people can figure that out in their college years. I didn't go to college. A lot of people get experiences when they're young, to go to dances. You know, they're on high school baseball team, you know, college teams or this, that, and the other. And I was working, you know, I didn't have time for all that. And so much later.
I relate to this so hard.
Yeah, I bet you do. I bet you do. You get it. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm not complaining at all. I have had just the most amazing life so far, and it just keeps getting better. And now that I've figured that out and prioritized that, I can now come back to this business and this industry and doing what I love with like a whole new perspective. And now that I know all that information, it's making everything better. It makes my music better, my writing better, my performances better. I'm more thoughtful with things when I want to do them, and I can put my whole heart into them without thinking like, oh, you know, let me just get through this and then I can get home. It's more intentional now.
Oh, that's important. Now, obviously, we're talking about what's been going on today and what you've been doing today. You got this new song called Make a Baby. I mean, what was the inspo behind this song? Like, is it what we really think it is? Like, Jesse McCartney making baby music? Like, what's happening, love?
So this EP, Make a Baby, was the second single from this EP that we released a few months ago. And it definitely was, it started out as like this true story of like my wife and I focusing on trying to start a family.
I know that's right.
And it became sort of this like fun, goofy pop song that about like all the crazy places and times of the day that you need to try to have a baby because you're on her schedule. And so we started with that. And at the time, I had just finished a college show with this young TikTok rapper named Young Gravy, and I did a show in Minnesota with him, and he was a fan growing up, and we met on stage doing a show, and we said like, hey, if there's ever a chance to do something, we should do something. And I wrote this chorus, and I remember thinking like, this is perfect for Gravy, and I sent it to him. He loved it, and it was so on brand for him because he's all about being like the Mr.
Get it popping?
Yeah, exactly. So we got together, we finished the record, and I think it was just like a fun, not take yourself too seriously record about a real thing, which is trying to start a family. But that song is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to play live.
Yeah, I love that. I heard that even when you were doing touring, that there were certain roles that you turned down in acting just so you could maintain your touring schedule. What were some of those things?
I think
if you mind sharing.
Probably the most notable was there was a big Disney movie called Camp Rock that was a big success.
Wow!
Yeah, we it didn't work out with the schedule, and in hindsight, like probably was one of the ones we should have done. It did wonders for some of those other people in that film. Mm-hmm. There was a film called The Last Airbender, which was like a M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah, of course.
That didn't end up panning out. That was there was a whole nother political thing going on behind the scenes why that didn't work out. But yeah, I mean, listen, you win some, you lose some. There's definitely some that didn't happen. Then I'm like,
What about She's the Man, Sebastian is She's the Man? Was that a real thing?
I don't really remember, to be honest.
It's me doing all the research.
I don't really remember. I know that was the Amanda Bynes film,
right?
Right?
Amanda Bynes.
Yeah,
I love Amanda
there
Bynes.
may have been something to that. To be honest, I don't want to. It's also just like feels a little impolite to talk about things that I turned down. But I do. I
guess I bring it up because it's a hard balance.
Yeah, it is. It's a hard balance
to decide what because with music in touring, it do take your schedule just as much as the movie does. So I'm like. Yeah, for you, it's, obviously, I always think hindsight is 20/20, and just because it was did something for someone else, it doesn't necessarily mean it would have been your same experience.
Totally.
So there's no regrets. But I do wonder, like, when you're thinking about, acting or music, it's hard to always be put in that position to have to choose between the two.
It is. It's hard. And you try to make your best informed decisions along the way. And sometimes like you're like, damn, I should have done that one. But, there's also projects that I've done that I was super excited about that just never saw the light of day, right? And you think it's going to be the next big thing. So no one has a crystal ball, No. It's just like you do what you can and you put your heart into things that you're passionate about. And if it works out, the rest is up to, the universe. But
okay, last question is, we're talking about all this reinvention in career, but obviously that is, right in line with reinvention in personal life. What do you think has been your greatest reinvention in your personal life up to date?
Good question. Greatest reinvention in my personal life. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to just really, and it sounds cliche, but man, as you get older, is it true? Like really enjoy the moment that you're in and try not to take any of it for granted. And, when it's great, enjoy it, savor it. And when it's bad, like learn from it.
That sounds like a hook.
Yeah, there you go.
Every damn thing. No, seriously. That sounded like a damn hook. I can hear you singing that.
Yeah.
That sounded like a hook.
It'll be on the next record.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. I love that. You're deep.
I mean, seriously, I think just perspective and, organizing what's important. Those things to me are the most fun. I think it's reflected in the new music for sure.
Jesse, I have lived for talking to you. And I truly do feel like everything that I felt about you as a kid, like the kind of person that you were, that was reflected in your music, is actually you. You have a beautiful soul, Jesse. You do.
You.
Now, before you go, I'd love to play a little game with you. I play with all my guests.
All right.
This one's called Quickies with Keke. So I'll ask you like a this or that question, and you'll just choose one. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay. Backstreet Boys or NSYNC?
Backstreet.
Wow, I was actually surprised.
I've toured with them twice, so I can't, got to give it to my guys.
Okay. 1990s or 2000s?
Oh, that's tough because 2000s is like my time.
Okay.
But I also love that I'm going to say 2000s.
Period. 2000s were everything.
Yeah.
Fan interactions, or do you prefer to be kind of like off to the side, like, hey, holla at your boy?
No, my fans are everything. Fan interactions. Without them, I have nothing.
Nickelodeon or Disney?
I'll go Disney.
Period. Beautiful Soul or Leaving? You know what
Depends on the year, but let's say, because it's the anniversary, we'll say Beautiful Soul.
Yes!
Yay!
I want another pretty face. That song eats down. Jesse, you're amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Anytime.
And thank you for just all the insight you dropped, man. It really struck me.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, thanks for having me, Keke.
Jesse will always be one of my all-time faves. It was so great hearing his journey, him reinventing himself over and over and over again. And it makes me think that reinvention is, at its core, really what it means to be a human being. I mean, reinvention isn't just about a career change or a new identity, but it's about moving through life with grace and not being afraid to change. So get out there and reinvent yourself. And I'll see you next week because you know it's your girl.
Baby, this is Keke. Baby, this is Keke.